Liquor store employees of Reddit. What is the craziest instance of underage kids trying to get booze you've ever encountered? Two guys tried to buy beer. I asked them for ID. They legit gave me their actual IDs. Like a vertical ID that had their dog clearly making them under 18. When I told them no, they were like, really man? Can't you just be cool? Like their whole strategy was to hope that the clerk would just be a cool guy. Hey. At least they were honest. I did this when drunk to get in a bar once. But I told the bouncer before handing him my ID, since drunk, that my 21st birthday was only like 2 weeks away. He said thanks for your honesty and let me in. It was a crowning achievement. I used to work at a bar. A girl came in and gave me an ID. I asked if it was hers. She said yes. What she didn't realize is that the purse she stole the day before, and the ID she was now using, belonged to one of the other bartenders. Calling her over to look at this was a satisfaction I haven't felt before or since. At the gas station I worked at, this kid walks in. No way he's more than 16. Heads straight to the beer cooler as my co-workers and I stare incredulously. He grabs a 12-pack and as he's approaching the counter, I ask, can I see your ID? He looks me in the eye, says nope, drops a $20 on the counter and walks out. We weren't sure what to do after that, because he didn't exactly steal anything. But we also couldn't just accept the money, because that would be selling to a minor. I left it for my boss to figure out. I had a guy come in to try to buy booze with an absolutely terrible fake tattoo. Tattoos and alcohol have the same age restrictions here. I'm guessing he thought that if he had massive tribal tattoos down his arm we would just assume that he was old enough. He'd clearly done them with a felt tip pen. But it was a hot day so the sweat was making them drip down his arm. I worked at a liquor and beer place adjacent to a grocery store. Lots of regulars and people from the neighborhood. For several weeks I had been serving this one guy. Pleasant. Polite. Early 20s. 6 feet 4 inches. Maybe 260 pounds. One day after he left, this older dude who was in line came up to the counter and said, you know that kid is only 16. Right? I couldn't believe it. Apparently he rotates from store to store until he gets caught. Sure enough, next time he came in I asked for ID. He just said goddammit and stormed out of the store. When I was in HS one of my friends looked like that. When he grew a full beard an elderly teacher said, Bill, I like your beard. His reply, so do the guys at the liquor store, left her mouth agape as he went down the hall. Here's an opposite one. I carded a guy once because I thought he was underage. He laughed this dejected laugh and gave me his ID, which was legit after careful inspection. He was about 10 years older than me. A living breathing man child. I started playing Magic when I was in my teens and quickly made friends with what I thought was a younger boy. We occasionally met up at the food court before tournaments to get food and play test. Well, 8 years later this kid still looks exactly the same. I'm finally drinking age and I go out and see him at the bar. I pull him aside and ask what he's doing there. Turns out he like 25 years older than me. The subject just never came up. I assumed he was just mature for his age this whole time and it never even occurred to me that he wasn't physically aging at the rate I assumed he should be. Not really crazy, but he came to the counter with a bottle of something. I asked him for ID. His reply was something like, is this how you treat all your customers? Comma. In some kind of tone like it was insulting to ask for ID. I said yes. We both kind of stood there for a few moments and he asked if I wasn't going to sell him anything. Not without ID. And then he walked out. I worked overnight at a gas station. Kid rolled in around 2 AM with what looked like a legit ID for being 21. But dude looked like a child. Also saw a cop car parked on the other end of the store when I went to check if it was a sting. I told the kid we can't sell alcohol past 2 AM. Ended up screaming at me saying it's only 5 minutes past. Truth be told, it was just a cover to keep from telling him I wasn't going to let him buy it here. Worked at a liquor store right outside of the university I was attending. Had a dude come in. Had to be like 18/19. He comes up and gives me the ID of a guy I grew up with. I just started laughing. In college we threw this big party that needed people to wear wristbands if they were 21 and up. I was stuck hiding at the door for a bit and this girl comes up and there's definitely no way she's 21. And sure enough, when it's their turn, her and her group of friends all get that eerie silent that underage people do when they're hoping not to get caught by a bouncer. She shows me her ID. It's my friend. Not just my friend but my friend who had her purse stolen recently. I told her this isn't you. She said yes it is. I said no it isn't. This is my friend. Where's her purse you took? The entire group goes deer in the headlights. She drops the purse and they all take off. She had like 15 IDs in the purse. I work at a bottle store in Australia. Not long ago we had a bunch of kids about 13-15 come in and start stealing bottles of spirits. We had a security guard at the time who was about 6'3" and 150 kilograms. These kids were swearing at him and running and like they wanted to fight. Crazy little bastards they were. I worked at a store where the liquor closet was in back and you had to be 21 to go down the hallway to it. I check this one kid's ID and it's obviously fake. I confiscate it and he's like whatever douche. Proceeds to walk back into the liquor closet. Grab a fifth of shitty vodka. And place it in the counter then demand I sell it to him. My co-worker and I were dying laughing at him. I used to look quite young for my age in my late teens. Early 20s. So quite often when I went to buy alcohol, back then it was 16 for beer and wine. 18 for everything stronger. But now it's 18 for any alcohol. I was told that they wouldn't sell to me because I was too young. Most times people would accept my ID or passport. Every now and then there was some back and forth before they eventually accepted. One person said he'd call the police. I told him to do it. I could wait. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Thankfully when I started growing some facial hair this all stopped quite quickly. Me, do you have ID? Him hands it over. Me, this says you're 17. Him, I must have picked up my brother's ID. Me, no. It has your face on it. Him, we're twins. Me, twins are usually the same age. He left quickly after that. Not a liquor store worker but when I was 18. I had these 10-year-olds ask me to go and buy them any flagon of premix alcohol. I took their $10 and went and bought them the cheapest cola in store which looked like a flagon of premix and kept the change. I was working behind a bar at a theme park. A kid who looked about 13 walked up to the bar and asked me for a beer. Of course. I asked him for ID. His response was I left it in my car with my wife. Couldn't serve him. But could fault him for trying. YTF would somebody leave their wife in the car while they go to the amusement park? Lol, nice try but next time at least have a story that makes sense. Not a liquor store employee but a tale from the other side of the counter. When I was a teenager back in the 80s I used to buy all the time by just confidently walking up to the counter and handing the guy my ID when he asked for it even though I was just 19 and the drinking age was 21. This was back before they had underage IDs with the different backgrounds. The funny thing was it only worked if the cashier was male. If the cashier was a woman, she'd invariably look at me with disgust and tell me I wasn't old enough and to leave. If the clerk was a guy, he'd invariably stare at my ID and you could just see the wheels in his head turning as he tried to do the math until he'd just ring it up and give me my ID back. I did that for at least 3 years until I turned 21. I once had a guy who was very kind. He was tall, had a trench coat. One of his hands was a broom. And he had freckles. He said he was going to have some alcohol and watch lots of R-rated movies like adults do. Which sounded good enough for me. He worked at the business factory too. So he must have been very important. Last I heard he had a kid. But the kid walked away when his dad was buying alcohol. But he had chocolate on his face and his dad gave him a kiss, which was why his dad also did. On my 21st birthday, I was waiting in line to buy a drink at a liquor stand at a festival. Extremely young girl in front of me tried to buy a Mike's Harder lemonade. The bartender took her ID, laughed, and proceeded to ask the girl what her zodiac sign was. The girl just stared at her dumbfounded and walked away to cry to her other friends who were also clearly under 16 years old. Worked at a liquor store, but this was a case of underage cigarettes, not booze. 17-year-old kid comes in at 7 p.m. Next day is his 18th birthday, which I knew because I checked his ID before selling him a pack. I used to try to buy smokes at 17, so I knew the deal and I wasn't mean. I just laughed and said, "Sorry man. I'll be more than happy to sell you a pack tomorrow. Happy birthday in advance though." And this kid legit cussed me out for 10 minutes straight. Instead of coming in the next day, he got 86'd from the only liquor store in town by the owner who was there at the time. I quit working there shortly after, so not sure if the kid was still 86'd by his 21st. About 10 years ago I worked in a local supermarket. At that time in my country you could buy beer and wine at age 16. The same age you can drive a low speed scooter with a helmet. So this group of kids came in every weekend to buy beer and wine with their helmets in hand. Always assumed they were old enough. One night the local cop was in line behind them, off duty. I decided to ask for their ID this time. Turns out they were 14-15 years, so yeah, no beer for them. When it's his turn, cop asks me if they come in often. I tell him they try every weekend. Next weekend the cop waits for them around the corner, busting them for underage drinking, drunk driving and driving without a license. Not a liquor store, but a 24H gas station that sold alcohol and had a drive-through window. Had a car full of obvious teenagers order a case of beer. I went up to the window with the beer and asked for ID. While they were looking for it, suddenly I hear this insanely loud crash from the front of the store. I go to investigate. It's another teenager who had knocked over a display of chips and whatnot near the entrance. I'm out there for like 20 seconds when I hear another loud noise from the back. I go back there to see a kid scurrying back out the drive-through window with the F-King case of beer and the car screeching off. And of course the kid from the front books it and gets in the car too. I used to work in a bottle shop attached to a supermarket. But this was a time when I was on a register in the supermarket. I saw a kid who I knew was 13. Or 14 at most. But was very tall and looked older. I saw him walking into the bottle shop. And tried to call my boss to let the bottle shop know the kid was underage. My supervisor chose to ignore me. I could see her talking to her friend. I could see people telling her that I was calling. She was too busy chatting to answer the phone. A few minutes later, I saw the kid walk out with a slab. He even said hello to me. Shortly afterwards, I had the opportunity to go to the bottle shop and ask if they carded the kid. Bottle shop. Yeah. He was from interstate tourist destination. Me. No. He lives down the road. He is 13 years old. Bottle shop was peeved. Not sure what they wanted me to do. Bolt down the length of the checkouts while I was serving customers to tell on the kid? Probably not. When I worked at Publix they would do stings at other locations to ensure compliance. And would always use underage employees, i.e. me, to do it. The problem was I had never had alcohol and also was 5'9", 120 pounds, so when I awkwardly walked up to the counter to try and purchase Jack Daniels, the clerk and another customer saw me, looked at each other, and just started laughing their asses off. I was too embarrassed to even try to convince him and walked out of there dejected. They never asked me to go on a sting again. I wasn't an employee. But when I was in school the local liquor store had a wall of shame where they'd display confiscated fakes. One was a picture of a driver's license glued to a Blockbuster card. And this was the 90s before widespread digital photography. So it was literally a photograph of a driver's license, like a film and darkroom photograph. Not a liquor store. But I was a bouncer at a nightclub when I was younger. In my state, if a licensed establishment asks for ID and you can't provide it, they cannot sell to you. Period. Regardless of age. So I'm working the door of the club and a group comes up. Some obviously older guys and a few young women. I ask the ladies for ID, which they provide and they check out. One of the guys snidely says, "Aren't you gonna check my ID?" "Sure." "Oh, I don't have it on me." "Sorry bud. Now you can't come in. I asked for your ID. You don't have it. I legally cannot allow you to enter." He got pissed, cussing at me. The door girl calls back up. Dude takes a swing at me and is instantly face down on the concrete with 3 guys holding him down. Ended up getting arrested for attempt assault, trespassing, loitering, harassment, and a disorderly conduct charge. I got to testify. I enjoyed watching his pain tremendously. Guy comes in, says he forgot his ID, but he's 25 and couldn't you just give me a break? I come in here all the time. I was in here like 2 days ago. Cashier keeps saying no. Sorry. etc. And guy keeps getting more desperate. Guy eventually goes, "Dude, I've been coming here for 10 years. Double quote. To which the cashier just goes, "Didn't you say you were 25? Double quote. I live in one of the minor capital cities in Canada. We had this ongoing thing where kids mob the liquor stores and grab what they can and go. Because we literally have no laws protecting the staff or customers. Security can't touch them. And yeah, it was pretty bad for a bit. Daily all over the city kids were just charging in and stealing shit. The one instance, they attacked and hospitalized an older fellow for stopping them. Another, the guy punched the lady in the till in the face as the security guard essentially hid back. The most recent one, which some people tried to turn into something like a BLM march for indigenous kids. The kids stole the liquor, claimed to have weapons, stole a vehicle and bombed down the highway, ramming into cars and police vehicles until the police rammed them off the road and opened fire, killing one. One of the other kids involved actually murdered someone a few weeks later. We've got some gang problems, in which kids are drafted because Canadian law makes them pretty much untouchable. Since then, you can't enter the liquor stores without sliding your ID through the glass to an employee, who will then buzz you into the store itself. Shit's wild. I was a junior high teacher and worked at a liquor store in the evenings. A student came in while I was there. He took one look at me and turned around and left with a muttered fuck. It was all over the school the next day and I wasn't the one who told. When I was working the door at a bar, as mentioned in a comment above, I also taught at a high school. One night I was at the bar just hanging out, and one of our students came in with a horribly forged ID. Like 5 feet away from where I was sitting. The next time I saw him at school he had such an expression on his face. He was really glad when I told him I wasn't going to get him in trouble. Opposite here. I had been regularly buying beer while underage from this one store. Usually the same clerk. And he carded me for the first time, manager standing by, 2 days after my 21st birthday. Watch this one go down at my buddy's bar. He had a group of 4 kids. 2 guys, 2 girls. That were all using fake IDs. The 2 girls were already pretty sauced when they got there. He took them all out front to remove them from his bar under heavy protest about their fake IDs being legit. The one girl started acting weird out front and walked off and the 2 guys were trying to get her under control. The other girl stood there and argued with him about her ID being real. Then in the same breath admitted to him that it was fake and that she fooled a cop with it before. While that was going on, the other girl showed back up with the 2 dudes and proceeded to do a splits on the sidewalk outside the bar to show my buddy how limber she was. All of this happened around 4 PM on a Sunday. I worked in a convenience store for years and kids would pester adults outside to buy it for them. Sold it to the adults to give to kids because I didn't get paid enough to care. Legally I was fine. The adults that needed to buy alcohol on Sunday morning were worst. It was a stupid law, but dude, wait a couple of hours. Where I'm from you can buy beer from convenience stores between 10 AM and 2 AM only. Watching the regulars pacing outside until they saw me unlock the beer cooler was sad and uncomfortable. 10-year-old boy walks up to the counter with a bottle of whiskey. I laugh and just say no. I'm thinking it's such a young kid that it had to be a lazy and or drunk parent sending their kid and thinking it's no big deal. No? Yeah. No. You're a small child. I can't sell you that. Here's my ID. Double quote. The 10-year-old boy was actually a 23-year-old woman. I did the rest of the transaction in silence. Many years ago my boyfriend worked at the liquor store. He sold an underage Marc-Andre Fleury a bottle of champagne. Back when he still played for Pittsburgh. I bet Matt's cheeky smile was the best after getting away with that. Worked at a gas station convenience store in college. I loved eyeing cops in uniform. They'd point at their badge and I'd say it doesn't look real to me. Double quote. The state guys and sheriffs were cool. Didn't hassle them. But the local idiots were douchebags.